Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Today, I have Adam, who also is known as the Sport Card King on Instagram. Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, and let's just go ahead and start at the beginning with you. How did you start collecting, and what was it that got you interested in the hobby in general?
So back around like maybe '04, '05, spending time with my grandmother, she was super into baseball and UK basketball. I live in Kentucky, so she was real big into those two. And spending time with her, she ended up showing me some cards that she had just compiled over the years and gave them to me. Nothing of value whatsoever, but just random Cincinnati Reds, UK, like oddball stuff. And it was just neat to me. And over time, I saw little nuances of things that piqued my interest. And probably around like '05 or '06, I started opening packs and kind of been off to the races from there.
And were there certain things that you were finding when you're opening packs, or just certain types of cards that just really kind of got you hooked into the hobby?
So back then, I was mostly into football and baseball. Basketball came a little bit later, but in like around '05, '06, the Chrome, like Topps Chrome base set really intrigued me because at that time I didn't know anything about patches, autos, vintage. It was just very simple. So seeing like the variation from the standard paper set to the Chrome and then kind of working your way up from there and getting some of the older stuff as well. Like you get like an insert card in '06 Topps of, I don't know, Dan Marino or somebody, and that would be kind of cool to me and off from there.
So, how would you best describe your collection at this point in time?
I collect pretty much extensively just Hall of Fame players. I don't mess with anybody that's really active. I mean, I have a little bit of like Aaron Rodgers in football, or like I have a Giannis autograph in basketball, things like that. Guys who I think are pretty much surefire Hall of
Hmm.
Famers by the time it's all said and done. But I don't prospect or do anything like that. I tend to stick with just like on card autographs and like game use patches. I don't do the player worn stuff we see a lot these days, but anything that's like game use, multiple colors, on card autographs, combination of the two, things like that would be what I'd say I stick to.
Yeah, I mean, I saw your collection on Instagram and was really impressed with the amount of Hall of Fame on card autos that you've collected, patch cards that you've collected, some really interesting, unique pieces. Um, so, yeah, talk to us about you know what kind of got you into some of those pieces. What have been some of the interesting things that you've kind of found over the years?
So for me, like the history of sports has been more intriguing than just what's happening now. Like obviously, I watch sports actively, like all of us do, and I'm a big fan of watching sports. But going back in time and kind of catching up on what I've missed has been almost of more interest to me than seeing the next game that's coming on. So I've had a lot of fun going back in time and kind of piecing together a collection of guys that most people my age probably wouldn't care to look for, but I find fun. And especially when you realize a guy like, I don't know, Oscar Robertson, for instance, has very few patch cards. So like finding that kind of stuff versus just an autograph is pretty cool. And just kind of on the hunt for the rarest stuff I can find. And rarity for me, which I like, is not necessarily expensive. So a lot of times the most rare stuff, the stuff that I find the most fun to pick up, is not very expensive comparatively to what most people are like chasing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so, do you have some things that you've collected that you're sort of most proud of, or just things that you're just really trying to complete, or things that you're really highly interested in terms of what you're trying to accomplish right now in your collection?
A few different things. For me, like I've had a few grails over the course of time. I've knocked out pretty much all the main grails I've wanted, mainly because I don't set too crazy of expectations. I try to be reasonable. But I'm working on the 61 Fleer set, not autographed like yourself, just as it is. I've done that in SGC new labels. I have one here I could just show for the sake of letting people realize what we're talking about.
Right.
But an Oscar Robertson there. I'm working on that set. I just need the Wilt to complete it. Then I'm also working on the 57 Topps basketball set. And I'm also trying to get an on-card autograph of every Hall of Famer who has one. So I'm not chasing necessarily in-person stuff to fill in the gaps for people who don't have one. But if they have a pack inserted on-card autograph that's licensed. I try to get one of everybody.
In terms of your sets, are you trying to get them all by a certain grader or a certain grade numerical value, or are you just trying to just get the best example of each card you can get?
Of course, trying to do the best I can, but I'm trying to keep the 61 set. I have 65 of the 66, all new label SGC, and the goal on that was 5 or better. I have a few that are just a touch lower, but most of them are between like 5 and 7. But then on the 57 set, I'm trying to do PSA 5 or better. It mismatched, I know, but it's just what I was able to find to get started.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, first of all, yeah, finding them as a 5, I mean, a lot of those are still going to be great looking examples as a 5 grade or above. They do look great in those SGC black and white holders. So yeah, I'm a big fan of getting the vintage stuff in the tuxedo SGC
Right.
holders. They look great in those. And yeah, I mean, also, yeah, finding a Wilds at around a 5 is still, it's still quite the endeavor. It's going to be quite the pricey card. So, sometimes you can't always get sets completed as a 7 or an 8 anymore,
For
especially
sure.
for some of those Grail cards that are going to be Grail cards for most people.
Yeah, the Wilton in particular is strange because you look at the pop report and there's really a lot of cards graded like 4, 5, 6, 7s. They just
Mhm.
never seem to come up available. Everything you see up for sale on eBay or other auction sites is generally like a 1 or a 2, an authentic grade, which I don't really want to go that route just to have a placeholder until I find what I'm really looking for. So it seems odd that they're in the pop report there shows to be a ton of 5s and 6s and things like that, but they must be tucked away and nobody's moving them.
Probably. That's probably a good guess. Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned a couple Grail cards. So can I prod you into naming one or two of your Grail cards that you've accomplished here recently?
Sure. The one I've had for a long time, it was my grail since I was a kid, was from when I was collecting football more extensively than basketball, was a passing the torch dual autograph of Walter Payton and Barry Sanders. That card came out in '99. It's an insert card. Only the first 100 are signed. The remaining 1,400 are just an insert. That was a card that I flipped through the Beckett magazine as a kid. And it was always like the one they showed in the image of the set. I really wanted that card. I ended up getting it around 2013 or 2014. I've had it ever since. It's one of the few cards I have that I've kept graded. It's a True Gem Plus from BGS. I'm not into graded cards, but at the time I was able to get a very good deal and pay virtually no premium for that. So it made sense to get. And then obviously I'm not foolish. I'm not going to crack that one out when it has a hefty premium associated to the grade.
Very nice. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not the football expert, but I can't imagine there are too many still sets with the Walter Payton on card autograph, correct? I mean, there's plenty of Barry Sanders over the years, but probably I can't think of how many that are probably Walter Payton autoed.
He doesn't have very many, and that's the only one he has, from my recollection anyway, that's a combination with someone similar in quality of talent that he had. So you'll find too, talking with me, we'll probably show a few things here in a minute, but I like a lot of combination cards, so cards that show more than just one person. A lot of people don't like dual and triple autographs, but that's something I really like, and I think part of the reason people don't care for them, you see a lot of busts with legends and it kind of clashes, but I go out of my way to try to find just legends with legends and
Yeah.
unique pairings that I like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is kind of funny to come across like a combo auto card of LeBron James and Darko Milicic or something like that. It's just like, oh crap, why does Darko have to be on that card? But sometimes also at the same time, it's also interesting in its uniqueness. I mean, I know Darko was a flameout in the NBA, but he was also one of the most highly touted international prospects that has ever come into the draft. And things obviously didn't work out for him in the NBA, but there's still a really interesting history of just that draft as a whole that had LeBron and Darko and of course Wade and Bosch and Carmelo and all the other guys. But I can understand why people kind of frown upon it, but at the same time, well, there's a real uniqueness about it that you know that doesn't exist in a lot of other examples because obviously, you know, they probably didn't ask Darko to sign very many cards after his first couple of years in the league.
I would assume not. And the nice thing too is if you do get, like in that example, in '03, you get LeBron to sign a duel with an existing legend or active player who's very good. and obviously LeBron worked out. You get a rookie auto of him paired with somebody. When it works exceptionally well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious when you paired him with a legend like Jordan or Dr. J or somebody like that, and those cards are just, they're skyrocketed. The value of those is just exponential. But yeah, I mean, some of those can definitely be really interesting, and I find them more and more interesting than I used to, for sure. I kind of frowned upon it for a while myself for some reason, but now I'm just like, yeah, there's an interesting uniqueness to a lot of those cards that is definitely sometimes more interesting than just an individual autograph, depending on circumstances and whatnot.
I agree.
So let's talk about some of your favorite autograph sets and patch sets as well that you've collected over the years, because you have a real interesting variety of sets from over the years, and I can kind of tell your main interest of finding, I think, some of the real hard to get sets nowadays, the ones that people have tucked away and don't come up for sale very often. But go ahead and talk about some of your favorite ones of those.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of almost coined myself as a Panini hater. I don't really care for most of the stuff Panini does, so that instantly knocks me back over 10 years. But for me, most of the stuff I chase is truly just stuff I saw being opened or showcased in the late 2000s, early 2000s when I started collecting into the early 2010s. And I couldn't afford at that time. I was a kid. I just saw the stuff. I thought it was really cool. But now that I'm going back, I stick with the same stuff I thought was cool back in 2006, 2007, 2008 onward. I just can afford it now and have a harder time finding it than I would have back then. So like sets like Exquisite, I really like. Upper Deck Black, I'm a big fan of. Chronology. And then also some of the more even older than that kind of iconic sets like Incredibles and Epic and things like that. All the original kind of on-card autograph sets I think are really neat too. But that's the kind of stuff I really like. And as you said, it's really tough to find anymore. And it's one of those things when you see it, you can almost never find a comp or an idea of what it's probably worth because one hasn't sold in so long. But when you find it, to me, most of that stuff is, unless it's like a huge name, an exquisite autograph of Jerry Lucas, even paying 10x the last comp might only be $200. Mm-hmm. So it's not so crazy expensive that you can't reason with even paying too much, because paying too much is only a few extra dollars.
Right. Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, as much as Panini has tried, and they've developed some somewhat interesting looking autograph sets over the years, but going back to the look and style and just sort of cleanness and uniqueness of a lot of those Upper Deck high end autograph sets, I just love the look of Chronology. The Stitches and Times patch autograph cards are just gorgeous. They don't look anything like what's produced nowadays. And obviously, yeah, the Exquisite brands. I mean, and I just love. I find it really interesting because unfortunately, Upper Deck was obviously, they lost their NBA license after like 2008 or something like that, and they just gotten the ball rolling on their high end brands like Exquisite and some of the others. So the fact that we only have like 5 years worth of Exquisites, Upper Deck NBA cards, and those autograph sets and those rookie patch auto sets, of course, I just find that, thinking about 15 years, 20 years down the road, how much more difficult it's going to be to find those cards available. I think it's just that they're just going to keep getting more and more difficult over the years.
Absolutely. It's become exceedingly more difficult recently than even was a few years ago to find a lot of that stuff. So when you find somebody who has stuff along those lines and they're willing to sell it, you must have to latch on for dear life because it's so tough, and you kind of have to work out a relationship to try to get as much of the stuff you're after as you can. That's what I try to do. One of the people you've interviewed recently, Bill, I think online it's L. Langley. Mm-hmm. He sold some of his stuff, and I've been able to snag a few things I've been after for a long time from him, just because he was wanting to move some of the stuff he had kept over time, and the stuff he had just hasn't come up for sale in a very long time. And for me, even a few things I had already but I have one and I haven't seen one in so long. I was like, how do I pass up on an opportunity for another one? But opportunities like that are what I try to look for and find what I can get and get everything I can, basically.
Yep. Yeah, it's getting harder and harder. I think it'll keep getting harder and harder. And I think that I think there's just been a bigger appreciation over the years of a lot of those cards and a lot of those sets. I mean, I remember I was kind of getting back into collecting in 2012, and I remember, but I remember people opening up still a lot of boxes from 2007, 2008, 2009 during that time period. And I remember still this sort of, I guess, feeling still of not sure what to think about the longevity of a lot of those cards and a lot of those products during that time period. I think as we gotten further and further away from that time period, I just think that there's just been a much bigger appreciation from of a lot of those brands. Even just thinking about like SB Authentic, and even though a lot of their autographs were just real basic designs, didn't look necessarily special, but I don't know. I think there's still a much bigger appreciation of like the choreography, SB Authentic cards than when they came out.
Absolutely, because you got to think back then when those sets were coming out, the next set afterwards had a similar nuance and similar appreciation to detail that one did. So it kind of gets shuffled in the mix, and they're all got nice at that time. Then you go in, and Panini made really nice sets for the first couple of years, and they still make a few here and there. Don't get me wrong, I still buy some, but the bulk of what they make is just very generic and kind of slapped together the same as it was the year before, and not a lot of change or not a lot of flair or creativity. So when you see that for the last 10 years, and you go back and look at a average set from '07, for instance, the average set from '07 just seems so much more spectacular because we're used to 10 years of mediocrity. But I mean, like I said, they do some good stuff. Some of the sets they do very well. They have acquired some unique, rare memorabilia that even Upper Deck or Tops haven't been able to. So, I mean, there's by no means have they done all bad. It's just they've produced so many products that just have added nothing to the market other than saturation.
Yep. I agree. And yeah, I challenge anyone who's watching this just to go online and just look up, any of the Upper Deck autograph products, especially the high end products from like 2005 to 2008, and just try and compare it to what's being produced now. And it's just, like the attention to detail, the just the way the cleanness of a lot of those designs, and it just doesn't compare to what's being produced nowadays, outside of like a few things like the really high end stuff that Panini produces. But even some of the high end stuff that they produce, like National Treasures nowadays, that just doesn't do much for me. There's really no ingenuity in it, and it doesn't look near as good as when National Treasures first came out those first couple of years.
And I know you're mostly a basketball guy, but National Treasures came out in '06 for football prior to the merger of Donruss Leaf and Playoff going into Panini. And that set to me is my favorite set ever made. And so like National Treasures has been completely shifted for me. Like '06, '07, and '08 were all created by Donruss Leaf and Playoff. And then in 2009, Panini takes over. It's okay. 2010, it's okay. And then after that, it's a pretty good downward trend from there. There's just so many player-worn options, sticker autos, no-name players that would have never been inserted originally in a product of that magnitude. And the price has only gone up for the quality to go down. So it's kind of a tough product to be interested in when you can just go back in time and be patient and find some more premium stuff.
Yeah. And I would say some of the better things that Panini has done over the years have been, I don't want to use the word ripoff, but it comes kind of closer, like the Panini 1-in-1. Yeah, I agree. Those are great looking cards. The canvas autos look fantastic. They look just like the Upper Deck Chronology cards, in my opinion, from 2007, pretty much. So it's just like, even the stuff that they do really well just seems like stuff that's already been done before by Upper Deck or Fleer back in the day,
I agree, and like that set there in particular, I think is done very well.
Hmm.
But they still made sure to make so many parallels of each version, which I don't really care for. Like the chronology one, we had black bordered out of 99 and gold out of 10. That was it.
Right.
And then Panini comes and makes one and one, timeless moments, and then they have purple and blue and gold and silver, and it just they add even more to it. And it's funny too to me, a lot of those players in that Panini set sell for more than the chronology version.
Yep.
So like you look and see it, like when they first come out, almost everybody in that set, no matter who it is, starts out at like $300 or $400 and works its way up. I just bought an Alex English chronology auto the other day. It just came in maybe 2 days ago for like $40 or $50.
Hmm.
So I mean, you can get players in the original set that I think is still better. It's similar, but still a notch in the right direction. I think for a fraction of what you could get the cheapest Hall of Fame autograph for in the Panini set.
Yeah, and they really push hard the marketing of those timeless moments canvas ones of like these are like one per case, so these are basically like a case hit in
Right.
one to one. It's like, well, yeah, but you are producing a ton of cases of
Right.
that product, and so I don't know. I still think that the chronology canvas ones are going to be a lot more rare to find over the years than the Panini one on ones for sure.
Definitely. And there's some situations with the Panini set where like because they have so many colors, red and blue, and so for instance, I'm a Celtics fan, so red on a Celtics card to me is just horrible. I won't touch ruby or red parallels of Celtics cards. So that's like a whole run of just ugly cards that most people who collect the Celtics wouldn't even consider. Most of my buddies who collect Celtics cards as well feel the same way. So it's almost like you made extra parallels not to add anything even. Like it's not like the red pops really well and the green pops really well for Rockets cards or anything like that. There's just always this clash. Whereas the classic set, it was silver and gold, and in terms of the foil, and there's not really any clash there.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know. Yeah, so not to go too far down the rabbit hole of comparing Panini products with the old products, but I still find myself really levitating towards the look, the design, the the rarity of the older Upper Deck Fleer autograph sets from back in the day, and as opposed to what's being produced right now. And like you talked about, like epic signatures. I mean, just it's still hard to outdo the look of the epic signatures sets, and then yeah, trying to find the short print parallels, especially of that set. It's
The
just
gold,
yeah,
yeah.
it's just impossible for most players, especially on in that set. It's so I mean, you want a challenge of as a collector in terms of autograph sets. You know, go back to those very first actual on card autograph sets that Upper Deck and Fleer did, and that is quite a challenge.
Absolutely. And the thing I think is kind of funny. A lot of people claim that those are kind of too simple. There's not a lot going on there. The people who are real into the modern products and stuff like that, and all it is kind of a foilless, flawless card. I mean, it's an all white card with a little bit of framing to it and an on card autograph. So, I mean, if it just had the epic wordage on there in foil, it would mimic a lot of the stuff we see that people flourish to. And and I just think it's strange that some people look away at that one and love the new stuff for the simplicity.
Yeah, but that's still something that I would prefer, though. Like I remember, I did baseball for a little while in the probably around 2012, 2013, and there was a Cooperstown autograph set. I can't remember what exact product it was in, but I just remember that set and just really liking the simplicity of the set because it was just basically like the head of the player, almost like it was his Hall of Fame bust, but it was an actual picture and just a space for their autograph, and it was a nice on card autograph, and they don't sell for very much money, but to me they just look nice, and they're just nicer to me than a lot of stuff that's put out nowadays. So I mean, yeah, I mean, and to me too, I mean, but that's also great because if you are interested in going on collecting them, yeah, a lot of them still don't go for a ton of money. But I would rather spend like 40, $50 on a Hall of Fame autograph from those sets than the amount of money that people are spending on some of the prospect autographs or other on card autographs that are being put out right now.
Definitely, and for $40 or $50, you could probably buy individually probably half the set. So I mean, most of the cards in that set are under $50, which is just crazy to think about. It's over 20 years old and iconic, but you can get several Hall of Famers in there for a very affordable price. Probably even in some cases 2 or 3 for $50.
Yep. Well, you had a few things that you pulled out that you wanted to share. I would love to see some of the things that you pulled out for us.
Yeah, I try to just grab a couple things from just different products and things that I like. We talked about Grail cards earlier. I didn't get into the most recent one I picked up. Like I said, as a Celtics fan, that was a card that I felt like I had to have. I wasn't necessarily trying to go for any particular grades. I just wanted to get one to kind of get the jump start on that set. As you can see, it's a 8OC, not normally a qualified card type of person, but the surface on these being predominantly black. A lot of times when you get into the lower grades, even 4s and 5s, things like that, you end up seeing a lot of almost like white specks or almost like the surface has been kind of tampered with over time. And as a result of that, the 8OC really gravitated me because of how dark the black is and how bright the colors are. So that's one I pulled there that I'm real happy to have picked up in the last few months.
Yeah, that's a nice one, definitely.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then there's just an oddball card that, like I was saying, I like a lot of different stuff, but
the
cons, like what they would probably call by today's standards at XRC, because his true Topps release was in '69, but this one came out in '63. So quite a bit before. And as a Cincinnati sports fan, Cincinnati Royals, although before my time, are pretty neat to collect. So this is in Cincinnati Royals uniform, whereas his '69 Topps is New York Knicks, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's neat that this is a way to get a card that suits both the Hall of Fame collector in me as well as the Cincinnati sports fan. So there's a couple of vintage cards I grabbed, and then I grabbed a few different sets and products that I like. This one more so was a card that I was after for a long time. I've always been a big fan of Tim Duncan and George Gervin stuff, and that was a card I searched for many years.
That's a cool.
Yeah, it's a tough one to find. You don't see them pop up too often, but I snagged it right before COVID for what I'd assume was probably a good price comparatively to today. But I'm very happy to have that one because, like I said, I really like both those guys and try to collect their stuff.
Yeah, Duncan didn't really sign very long.
No, he has some rookie year press pass stuff, and then he has maybe 3 or 4 years of Topps or Bowman, in that case, releases. But as a whole, I mean, he hasn't signed anything, I don't believe, since maybe 05 or 06.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah, and it seemed like he had an exclusive deal with Topps or something, because that's all you find his stuff in is those from like 2000 to 2003, 2004 Topps products, basically.
And a lot of those too are stickers, which I'm not opposed to stickers entirely, but obviously prefer on card. So his on card stuff is probably only maybe 50% of what was released.
Yeah.
Just kind of mixing it up as I go here. This is a patch card, but although Lakers as a Celtics fan, I do collect Elgin Baylor's stuff. And this one in particular, I snagged because it's the only time they've ever actually inserted the blue Minneapolis Lakers patches into a card. Topps is the only one to have acquired that memorabilia. So I wish they would have used a photo of that Arrow jersey being worn by Elgin. That's something that works. But the fact that they used the blue patches and it's a 3-color patch in there, I really liked.
Yeah, that is a little bit of an annoyance. And they don't do a photo match. It's like, can you at least? I mean, it doesn't have to be from the exact same game, obviously, but just do some type of other photo you can find of him wearing a blue jersey or something. That would be really nice. But
I agree, especially knowing that they had such a rare material. Like they knew what they had, so it's like they could have easily just snagged a photo of him in that era, even if black and white. The scripture or text is notably different, so it would have been cool. But on a side note of that, one of the guys, if after this video or anybody listening wants to look at, just go on eBay and look at patch autos of Hakeem Olajuwon. I don't know what it is, but they never match them correctly. Ever. Almost every single one you'll find is the early kind of scripted all white with blue. The red letters are all red with the white letters with the patch of like the silver and blue Rockets jerseys, and
Yeah.
then vice versa. I don't know what it is, but he's for some reason never matches up properly, and it drives me nuts. I've only been able to find one that was a flawless that matches the old style, and I picked it up because I like that. And it fits well for me. But yeah, that was just something that made me think of it. But as a Celtics fan, I've actually got two of these. I just grabbed one for the purpose of this conversation. But UD Black, as I talked about, being one of my favorites, and I liked obviously multiple signed cards. This one was one of my favorites.
Yeah, those are the really cool ones, especially when you have those franchises where you can like just put in a Hall of Famer from like a different decade and get them all to sign the same card. If it's when they're not sticker autos, especially, they just look so great, and that that's a one of a kind piece to have in your collection.
And on top of the not being sticker aspect, it's kind of neat when you think about it that Bill Russell, Larry Bird, and Paul Pierce all held that card and hand signed it. And obviously Bill Russell's not signing anymore, but that's just kind of a neat thing that kind of brings you closer to them. Another UD Black, this one dual with Sam Jones, who I think has an incredible signature. He's unbelievably underrated.
And that is such a cool looking card. The silver ink with the black background, and yeah,
platinum hollow foil. Yeah, it really pops. I like that one quite a bit. Gonna move on. I've got a little grouping of Celtics cards here. Speaking of pairings, this was one that I was after for a long time, and I really like. They only have that I've found two different sets from Exquisite that they've ever signed together, 2 different years of dual enshrinements. I've actually managed to snag both of them, but this was my favorite of the two. I don't know if it's captured in the video here, but it has some really nice etched hollow foil.
Mm-hmm.
That is just super nice in hand, and then like all the green around the edges up here is like a almost glitter surface that just really pops. But I really like that set. Got from 09, the final year of Exquisite 09-10, the throwback 03-04 design.
Yeah,
Larry Bird in the design that you would normally see like LeBron and Bosh and Wade and stuff like that in. But that was one that I really wanted for a long time. It's very subtle, but like the background has a really cool foil to it where Bird is, and it just pops really well, I think.
Yeah, and that turned out to be such a great idea to do the 03 throwback design in the 09, which was the final year that they had the NBA license, and so they can do they did a lot of the vets in Hall of Fame signatures in that design with the patch on it. I'm really happy that they did that, and there's some really great looking cards that came from that set. Yeah.
It's kind of nice, too, that they almost bookended their run of high-end basketball products with 03-04 having the rookie year class that they did and having the LeBron card that's like $1 million card today, and then ending it with all the legends kind of finishing it out in that same design. But moving on, I think this might be the first Panini card of the bunch, but one that I was extremely excited to see on the sell sheet. But Soul of the Game cards are some of my favorite to collect. I just love the difference being like the shoe relic versus just jersey or shorts. So that's a Converse Soul of the Game piece from John Havlicek.
Were they able to date those from that set, at least to the year that he wore those, or they just say it's game worn or something?
They just say it's game worn. The only thing I've done a little bit of looking. The only thing I found on that particular like source material, I want to say it was Heritage Auctions sold a single shoe of Havlicek maybe a year or two before that product came out. And the fact that that's numbered to 13 too, it's a little bit shorter of a print run than most that you'd see in that set. So it's likely that maybe they only had one shoe versus a pair, and that's the one it came from. But I've never seen any more of the material, like the upper portion of the shoe has never been released into anything. So until we see that, we probably won't know exactly what it's from, if it does match, in fact, the auction that went maybe a couple of years ago prior to that release. But it's one that I just thought was so cool because John Havlicek jersey or patch cards is very tough to find as it is. So getting something even more unique in a shoe, being Converse of all things, I thought it was pretty neat. But just a couple more to go. I grabbed a couple just unique patch cards. I mentioned this person earlier, but Oscar Robertson doesn't have a ton of memorabilia stuff out there. I wish he had some really nice patches from his Royals days, but I've yet to see anything like that. But some nice patches there from his Milwaukee run.
That's really interesting. Those colors and the patch down at the bottom, especially, you don't see that for sure very often.
All right, and this was one of the last ones here. It was a Elvin Hayes patch from Flawless. He doesn't have a whole lot of prime stuff. Most of his stuff that's out there is just like autographs. You don't really see any game use. So this one being matching the team in the photo and the patch was really neat to me, and obviously pretty chunky patch, as they call them.
Yeah, and that's a really cool looking patch. Is that from, does it say if it is one of his San Diego jerseys, I suppose, or something?
I don't believe it actually indicates it. It just says game worn material, but the color combination throughout his career would lead it to be the San Diego Rockets.
Yeah, which once again, I can imagine there are very many patch pieces just in general for San Diego Rockets, because
that's the only one I've seen is that, and that's another thing, as you pointed out there, is just kind of unique to even find something of that team. Most people didn't know existed, let alone having some game use memorabilia from it. But
yeah,
I just had
go ahead.
Sorry.
You're fine. Yeah, I think they were only out in San Diego for a few years, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right. Yeah.
All right, and what else? Sorry.
I just had one card left. It's nothing too crazy, just something I picked up recently. I've been after for a long time, and we were talking about kind of the hunt for how hard some of these cards can be to find from the Upper Deck era in the mid to late 2000s. But I really like this subset, and this one in particular I was after for a long time, partially because I like Bob Pettit stuff. Mm-hmm. The only person to best Russell in a final series kind of ties into that, but he was also the first 20,000 point scorer in the NBA. So this card being 20,000 point club, him being the inaugural member, that was one in particular that I really wanted. And I've had a few of those over the years. Like I have a Havlicek in my collection I've had for a while, but that was the particular one I wanted over any of them. And I just managed to get it maybe 3 weeks ago. So that's why I snagged it to something new that I haven't shared.
Very cool. Yeah, and he's a great example of what we were talking about earlier of guys that you can find that aren't that expensive to purchase his on-card autographs. But, I mean, you think about the importance of Bob Pettit in the early years of the NBA and how he was a two-time MVP and won an NBA championship and all these things and member of the top 50, top 75 team. I mean, he's one of the best players of all time, and just for some reason the market on his on-card autos has not really exceeded a lot of the other ones, even when you compare him to Kuzi and Havlicek and some of the others from back then. But yeah, like you can find some really nice Bob Pettit stuff for not that expensive.
Yeah, if you like the epic type sets, I mean that card there is maybe only a $40 or $50 card. I'm not sure how much it's at currently, but not a very expensive card for a player that played so long ago and was so exceptional. But I think probably part of it too is he played almost too long ago for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, he's still alive. So he's a very old guy, and he's not signed a ton, surprisingly, for being around as long as he has. But I think he falls in that category where if you're not really into Hall of Fame basketball from start to finish, he may not even be on your radar, unfortunately.
Yeah. But if you do collect Hall of Fame, he's very important.
Right. That's very important and a heck of a value, as you indicated, just to be able to buy somebody as such a pioneer of the game at that value is just crazy. Yep,
absolutely. And you said that was your last piece?
Yeah, that's the last one I brought out for us, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. No, I appreciate you bringing those out and showing us. Those are some amazing, amazing looking cards. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention? Any other sets you're trying to complete, or just anything else that you're heavy into right now that you're looking for that you wanted to just go ahead and shout out?
I think I've mentioned most of it. I'm looking for 57 Topps basketball, more commons than anything. I've gotten most of the big cards out of the way. That's one of those sets, for whatever reason, the more run-of-the-mill guys don't pop up a whole lot unless it's a crazy price or just horrible condition. the in between stuff like I'm looking for doesn't seem to pop up. So if you have stuff like that, reach out. I'd be happy to cross reference what you have versus what I need and try to make a deal with somebody. I still need the Wilt, as I talked about, from 61. So if you have a mid grade, maybe 5 or 6, 7 of a Wilt and SGC grade, I'd love to talk about that. But anything like what you see here, whether it's Celtics or Legends, whatever it may be, if you have Hall of Fame unique stuff, patches, autographs, I'd be happy to talk with you like we are, or even consider buying some of the stuff as well.
Great, yeah. And once again, we can find Adam at the Sport Card King on Instagram. Adam, thank you so much for chatting about your collection and talking about your passion for autographs and patches. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time today.
I appreciate having me on. I really do. Thank you.